For nearly 2 decades, Seth Curry held onto a secret about his brother Steph, one so significant it could have rewritten the history of basketball. It was a truth so deeply buried that even their parents were unaware of it. But when Seth finally chose to speak about what really happened back in 2004, the revelation stunned the entire Curry family. What unfolded would forever shift how the world viewed the Curry legacy in basketball. The familiar scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon-sweetened sweet potatoes filled the Ethiop house in Oakland. It was Thanksgiving 2023, and the Curry family had gathered as they had for years, keeping alive a tradition that not even the demanding schedules of the NBA could disrupt. Though the elegant mahogany table could seat 8, only 6 spots were filled that evening. Steph Curry, dressed in a navy blue casual shirt, was focused on slicing turkey for his kids, Riley and Ryan, who excitedly chatted about school. Aisha moved gracefully around the table, dishing out cranberry sauce, her golden earrings catching the soft glow from the chandelier. Across from her, Seth Curry sat quietly, his gaze thoughtful and unsettled, something Dell, his father, had noticed increasingly in recent weeks. It was a restlessness that didn't fit the easygoing son they all knew. "You've barely eaten anything, Seth," Sonia Curry said, her tone laced with a mother's ever-present concern. "Is everything okay, sweetheart?" Lifting his eyes to meet hers, Seth seemed composed, carrying the quiet confidence shared by all the Curry men. But there was something in his face that echoed the shy teen he once was, the boy who used to linger in the background during Steph's early interviews. "Actually, Mom," Seth began, carefully setting his fork down. The clink of metal on porcelain seemed louder than usual. "There's something I need to tell everyone. Something I've kept to myself for a long, long time." A sudden hush fell over the room. Steph paused, his full attention turning to his brother. His sharp eyes, so much like Seth's, locked onto him. Dell leaned in slightly, fingers laced, while Sonia felt her stomach knot, her instincts warning her that this was no ordinary moment. "How long are we talking?" Steph asked, attempting to sound casual, though worry crept into his voice. Seth inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the moment press against him. He glanced at each face at the table, silently taking in the love and familiarity, knowing nothing would be quite the same after this. 19 years, he said quietly but clearly. "Since you were 16, and I was 14. The silence that followed was like nothing that house had ever known. It wasn't the content quiet of a well-fed family or the brief pause between conversations. It was a charged silence, the kind that comes before truths that shift entire relationships. Aisha instinctively drew Riley and Ryan close, reacting to a tension she didn't yet understand. The children sensed the change too and looked up, wide-eyed, at their Uncle Seth. 19 years? Dell repeated, his deep voice steady with the weight of experience. As a father and a former NBA player, he had faced pressure and challenges, but something about the look on Seth's face told him this was different. Slowly, Seth gave a nod. "I know this might sound strange, and I understand you're all probably wondering why I waited so long to say anything," Seth began, his voice tight. "But there are things that happened when we were teenagers, things that completely changed how I viewed our family, our circumstances, and especially..." He paused, eyes locking with Steph's. "How I saw myself as your older brother." Steph felt his pulse quicken. Despite the natural rivalry that existed between athletic siblings, he and Seth had always shared a strong bond. They had split bedrooms, swapped dreams, dealt with disappointment, and celebrated wins together. The thought that Seth had hidden something meaningful for nearly 20 years unsettled him, yet stirred his curiosity. "Seth," Sonia said softly, her hand reaching across the table to gently touch her son's. "Whatever it is, we'll understand. You're our son. That will never change." Seth's eyes shimmered with an emotion he hadn't let surface in a long time. "I know, Mom. You've always been amazing to me, to all of us." Maybe that's exactly why it was so difficult to bring this up. Because what I did, the choice I made back then, it came from wanting to protect this family. To protect Steph. "Protect me from what?" Steph asked, his tone suddenly tense and urgent. "Seth, seriously, what are we talking about?" Seth closed his eyes, steadying himself. When he opened them again, his expression carried a newfound resolve. Do you remember how everyone used to say we were lucky to be naturally gifted at basketball? That it felt like it ran in our blood? Heads around the table nodded. It was a common thread in their family story, one often mentioned in interviews and documentaries about the Keys. Well, Seth continued, his tone now stronger, not everything was just luck or raw talent. And the reason I've kept this to myself all these years, he glanced again at Steph, is because I didn't want it to affect how any of you see Steph's accomplishments. There is, completely and fully. But how it all started, that began with a choice I made when I was 14. The air in the room grew heavier. Dell was reminded of high-pressure moments from his playing days, those seconds before a pivotal move. But this was more personal. This wasn't about games or championships. This was about his children, and a secret that had silently shaped their paths. A choice? Isa asked softly, her voice cutting through the tension like a thread of calm. What kind of choice? Seth looked at her, grateful. Isa had always known how to ask the right questions when it mattered most, a gift that made difficult moments easier to bear. The kind of choice, Seth said, emotion rising in his voice, that an older brother makes when he realizes he has the power to drastically change his younger brother's future. The kind of choice that ends up defining everything that comes after. He paused again, scanning each face at the table. And before I say any more, I just need you to know, I don't regret what I did. Not even for a second. But carrying it alone for all these years, it was far harder than I ever imagined. Steph reached out and placed his hand over his brother's. Seth, no matter what it is, we'll face it together. Like we always have. A smile finally broke across Seth's face, genuine and warm, the first of the night. Thank you, Steph. That means everything to me. The Thanksgiving dinner had become something far more meaningful than anyone had expected. Everyone seated at the table sensed they were on the brink of learning something that would forever change how they viewed the Curry family and the remarkable path that had led them to that moment. Outside, the crisp autumn air in Charlotte was filled with the scent of fallen leaves and the anticipation of a new basketball season. At the Curry home on Barkley Downs Drive, daily life revolved around training routines, school games, and the steady rhythm of basketballs bouncing in the garage entrance. Inside, 14-year-old Seth Curry sat on his bed, gazing through his second-floor window. He watched his younger brother, Steph, only 12 but already taller, practicing shots on the hoop their father, Dell, had installed at the front of the house. Even from a distance, Seth could see how naturally Steph moved, how the ball flowed from his hands as if it were part of him. That boy is special, Dell had said a few weeks earlier after seeing Steph dominate a game against much older players. He has something you can't teach. Seth was a strong player in his own right, holding a solid scoring average on the Myers Park High School team, but he was beginning to notice the clear difference between being talented and possessing the rare brilliance that captivates crowds. Moments later, Steph came into the room, his face glowing and his shirt damp with sweat from the spontaneous training. Seth, did you see those plays I practiced today? Coach Johnson said if I keep this up, I could get a scholarship to any university I want. Seth gave his brother a warm smile, though a familiar ache tightened in his chest. It wasn't jealousy exactly, but something more nuanced, a growing realization that Steph was destined for something far beyond what most could imagine. And with that, the family's attention was gradually shifting to support that destiny. That's amazing, Steph, Seth said sincerely. You really deserve every chance that comes your way. Just days later, Seth received a call that would shift the course of his life. It was Marcus Williams, a talent scout who had noticed him at a regional tournament. Seth, I've got an interesting opportunity for you, Marcus said in a professional but friendly tone. He explained that the Elite Performance Academy in Los Angeles, renowned for producing players who earned university scholarships and went on to the NBA, was offering full scholarships to select young talents. They had seen Seth's stats and were impressed. Seth's heart pounded. Marcus went on, it's a rigorous 3-year program, elite training, top-tier academics, and direct access to college scouts. But there's a catch, Only one spot is available, and they need a decision by the end of the week. One spot? Seth repeated. Yes, Marcus confirmed. And here's the twist, they're also considering your brother Steph for that same position. Someone tipped them off about his talent, too. At that moment, time seemed to freeze for Seth. He knew that if both names were in the mix, Steph would be the clear choice. His younger brother was already showing signs of being a prodigy. Can I have some time to think about it? Seth asked. Of course, Marcus replied, but understand, this might be a once-in-a-lifetime chance for either of you. That evening at dinner, Seth quietly watched his family. Del was enthusiastically recounting one of his old NBA stories, hands in motion as he relived a favorite moment on the court. Sonia laughed beside him, her eyes sparkling with pride. She always radiated a quiet pride when she spoke about her husband's accomplishments. Steph listened intently, soaking in every word as though they were precious lessons. In that moment, Seth made a choice that would define the next 19 years of his life. The following morning, he picked up the phone and called Marcus Williams. I'm not going to accept the spot, Seth said, his tone unexpectedly firm for a 14-year-old. Seth, are you sure? This is a big opportunity. I'm sure, he replied. But I want to suggest something, please take a closer look at my brother, Steph. He's different. He's got something I never will. That's very mature of you, Seth. But before Marcus could continue, Seth cut in, if you're looking for the best player, it's Steph. I'm okay where I am. After the call ended, Seth sat quietly on his bed, letting the weight of his decision settle. He had willingly passed on a chance that could have changed his life, but he had no doubt it was the right thing to do. 3 weeks later, Steph received a call from the Elite Performance Academy. The family celebrated like a miracle had just occurred, an unexpected opportunity that could launch Steph's future. Del and Sonia spent countless nights talking through the decision to let their 12-year-old move to California. Eventually, they agreed it was too great a chance to miss, and that the whole family would move with him. It's like the universe is working in Steph's favor, Sonia said one night while packing. Seth, listening quietly from the staircase, smiled sadly. It wasn't the universe. It was a big brother who chose to put his younger siblings' dreams ahead of his own. In the months after relocating to California, Seth watched Steph thrive at the Elite Performance Academy. The boy who had already shown promise in Charlotte transformed into something remarkable under the guidance of elite coaches. His game sharpened, his confidence grew, and word of his talent spread quickly through youth basketball circles. Seth, meanwhile, settled into a new school, made friends, and continued playing basketball, always aware that he had taken a different path, one he had chosen for himself. He didn't carry regret or resentment. In fact, seeing Steph succeed brought him real joy. But it also complicated how he saw himself. How could he explain that the miracle everyone believed in wasn't random at all, that it was his choice, his sacrifice? How could he tell them he had quietly redirected their lives? As the years went by and Steph achieved greater and greater things, Seth found it harder to talk about what he had done. Not because he regretted it, but because he never wanted anyone to doubt that Steph's accomplishments were truly his own. Because they were. Seth had only opened the door. Steph had walked through it with unmatched talent, relentless effort, and his own brilliance. Yet to the outside world, that distinction wasn't so clear. And so, protecting the integrity of Steph's journey became Seth's quiet mission, one he upheld for nearly 20 years. The final buzzer rang out through John M. Belk Arena as Steph Curry scored 40 points against Gonzaga, pushing Davidson into the Elite Eight for the first time in nearly 4 decades. In the stands, his older brother Seth screamed with excitement until his voice gave out, watching Steph achieve something few 19-year-olds ever do, capturing the imagination of an entire nation. As Steph was hoisted by his jubilant teammates, Seth felt a familiar blend of overwhelming pride and the quiet burden he'd long grown used to carrying. The crowd erupted, as if witnessing pure magic, and in a way, they were. But Seth knew that the roots of this moment stretched back 4 years to a quiet choice he'd made and kept secret. That kid's going to make it to the NBA, someone nearby shouted. He's too special not to. Seth nodded, smiling, though he felt the usual nod inside. Steph was unquestionably gifted, but the road that had brought him to this spotlight was far from simple. Later that evening, during the family celebration at a restaurant, their father Dell lifted a glass. "To Steph," he said, "who reminds us every day that dreams come true with talent and hard work." "To Steph." Everyone echoed the toast, raising their glasses. Seth smiled and drank too, silently offering his own, "To the sacrifices we make for those we love." In June 2015 at Oracle Arena in Oakland, golden confetti rained down as the Golden State Warriors secured their first NBA title in 40 years. Steph had led the charge, and the arena throbbed with joy. On the court, Seth embraced his brother, tears streaming down his face. "We did it, man!" Steph yelled over the roaring crowd. "We really did it." Seth held him tighter, voice thick with emotion. "You did it, Steph. This is all yours." That night, during a private family gathering, Seth slipped away to the terrace of their parents' Oakland home, gazing out over the city lights reflecting on the bay. Inside, laughter and music echoed, stories flowing about the fairy tale season that had just wrapped. Sonia joined him on the terrace, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. "You okay, honey?" she asked gently, handing him one. "You seem quiet for a night like this." Seth took a sip and nodded. "I'm fine, Mom. Just trying to take it all in." Sonia stood beside him, eyes on the shimmering skyline. "Sometimes I look at Steph and still see the 12-year-old who moved with us to California, chasing a wild dream." Seth nearly choked. "You remember that?" "Of course," she said. "It was one of the toughest choices your dad and I ever made, leaving Charlotte, starting fresh, betting everything on the hope that Steph could be something more." She paused, then added, "Sometimes I wonder how different life would have been if that academy opportunity hadn't come along." Seth felt a tightness in his chest. "Different how?" he asked. "Maybe Steph wouldn't have gotten the training that prepared him for Davidson. Maybe you would have had more chances to shine instead of always being in his shadow." She touched his arm gently. "That couldn't have been easy for you." "Mom," Seth started, but the words didn't come. How could he say that the path that changed everything hadn't been fate, but a quiet act of love he never shared? "Seth," Sonia said softly, continuing, "I want you to understand that we are just as proud of you. Your unique journey in basketball, your time at Duke, and now your career in the NBA. You created something remarkable all on your own." His mother's words were kind and well-meaning, but each sentence added more pressure to the secret Seth was carrying. The truth was that his path had been influenced by a decision he made when he was 14, a choice that had indirectly shaped the entire family's future. Portland Trail Blazers, January 2019. Seth was warming up before a game against the Sacramento Kings when Steph called him. It was rare for them to talk before games, so Seth answered right away. "Seth, man, did you see the news?" Steph's voice was full of emotion. "What news?" Seth asked. "Sports Illustrated just published a story about our family. They're calling us the Curry dynasty and describing our rise as an unlikely fairy tale." Seth's stomach dropped. "Oh, they interviewed Mom and Dad. There's a part where they say it was miraculous that I got the chance to attend the Elite Performance Academy as a kid, like it was destiny or something." Seth closed his eyes and leaned against the locker room wall. "Steph, you know what's strange? I've been trying to remember exactly how that opportunity came about, and I can't recall the details. It feels blurry." "Sometimes childhood memories get mixed up," Seth said quickly. "Maybe. But Seth, sometimes I feel like there are parts of our story I don't fully understand, like there are hidden layers no one's ever told me about." Seth opened his eyes and looked at his reflection in the mirror. For 16 years, he had kept this secret, and now his brother was starting to notice that something didn't quite add up. "Steph," Seth said carefully, "do you think it matters? No matter how the opportunities came, you're the one who put in the work. You're the player you are because of what you did." "It definitely matters," Steph answered. "Not because I want credit for something I didn't earn, but but because honesty and authenticity have always been the foundation of our family. If there are parts of our story I don't get, I want to understand them. That night, Seth had one of the worst games of his career. He missed shots he usually made easily, lost simple passes, and was taken out in the third quarter. After the game, sitting alone in his car in the arena parking lot, he picked up his phone 3 times to call Steph and confess everything. But each time, he hesitated, wondering how he could explain keeping this secret so long without making it seem like his original reasons were flawed. Dallas Mavericks, April 2022. Seth was facing one of the toughest times in his career. After a difficult season in Dallas, rumors about his future in the NBA were spreading. At 31, he understood his chances were narrowing. While visiting his family in Oakland, he found Dell arranging trophies and memorabilia in the home office. There were 2 shelves, one showcasing Dell's NBA achievements and a larger one dedicated to Steph's accolades. "Dad," Seth said as he entered the room, "is there space on those shelves for a few more things?" Dell laughed. "Of course, son. Your Duke stuff is still packed up in the box you brought last year. I can set up a section for you." The 2 Seths moved toward the shelves, taking in Steph's MVP trophies, championship pictures, and other accolades that told the story of an incredible career. "Dad," Seth said quietly, "do you ever wonder how things might have been different? Like, if circumstances had changed when we were kids?" Dell paused his organizing and looked at his son carefully. "Seth, that doesn't sound like you. You've always been someone who accepts things as they are." "I know. It's just," Seth hesitated, searching for the right words. "Sometimes I think about the decisions people make and how those choices impact others. How even a small decision can change a person's entire path." Dell moved closer, concern clear on his face. "Seth, is there something on your mind?" Seth met his father's golden eyes, the same eyes he and Steph had inherited, and almost spoke the whole truth. He nearly explained everything about Marcus Williams, the elite performance academy, and the early decision a 14-year-old had made, quietly shaping the family's future. But then he thought of Steph, of his achievements and the purity of his journey as everyone knew it. He thought about the clear and inspiring story the Curry family shared with millions. "No, Dad," Seth said at last. "I'm just struggling with my career right now. Nothing I can't handle." Dell hugged him tightly. "You know we're proud of you no matter what, right?" "I know, Dad. I know." As Seth returned the embrace, he felt the familiar burden of 19 years of silence, a burden that started as a teenager's selfless choice and had become far more complicated. A truth that could change how his family viewed their own past, but also disrupt the hopeful story they showed the world. As 2023 drew near, Seth realized the secret's weight was almost too much to bear. Not because he regretted his choice, but because his family's love and unity deserved total honesty. It was time to believe their love could handle a complex truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be at first. The quiet in the dining room felt endless, even though only seconds passed. Seth scanned his family's faces as they absorbed his words and knew he couldn't turn back. "The Elite Performance Academy," Seth said, his voice steadier now, carrying the resolve to finally reveal a secret kept nearly 20 years. "Steph, do you remember when they called you with the full scholarship offer when you were 12? Steph nodded slowly. "Of course. That changed everything for me." "They didn't call you first," Seth revealed, each word seeming hard to say. "They called me. Marcus Williams, the scout, told me they had a spot open and that I was the top candidate. But then he said they were also considering you." Steph's face shifted from confusion to growing understanding. "Seth, I knew." Seth's words flowed freely now, like water finally breaking through a dam. "I knew if they had to choose between us, they would pick you. Because even at 12, Steph, you were magical in a way I never could be. So I called Marcus the next day and told him I wasn't interested. I said he should put all his focus on you." Sonia covered her mouth, tears filling her eyes. "Seth, you were only 14. When I was 14, I saw a chance to do something meaningful for my younger brother," Seth said, looking straight at her. Something that could completely transform his life. And I have never regretted it, Mom. Not for a single moment. Del leaned in, his voice low but firm. Son, you gave up your own chance. Seth gently corrected him. I redirected an opportunity. I moved it to where it could have the greatest impact. And look where it brought us. He gestured around the table at their family and the life they had created. Would I do it differently if I could go back in time? Steph was silent, absorbing this. His thoughts raced through memories, piecing together events, viewing his youth in a new light. Seth, why did you never tell us this? Seth took a deep breath. I didn't want this to change how you see your achievements, Steph. Every title, every record, every unforgettable moment you made is entirely yours. Your talent, dedication, and hard work built all that. I simply opened the door. You were the one who walked through it and built the empire. Steph rose from his chair and walked over to Seth. Without a word, he embraced his older brother. Seth felt Steph's shoulders shaking slightly. Steph whispered, his voice breaking, you gave up your own dream for me when you were just a kid. It wasn't a sacrifice, Seth replied, hugging him back. It was love. I saw my younger brother's gift, a gift the world needed to see, and I made sure nothing stood in the way. Isa wiped tears from her eyes, touched by the deep brotherly love she was witnessing. Seth, carrying this burden alone for so long must have been incredibly hard. Seth stepped back but kept his hands on Steph's shoulders. There were tough moments, he admitted. Especially when everyone said it was luck or destiny that brought Steph to the academy. Or when people called our family lucky. But I knew it wasn't luck, it was a choice made out of love. Del stood and approached his sons, his voice thick with emotion. Seth, I don't know many grown men who would make such a selfless decision, let alone a 14-year-old boy. Dad, you and Mom taught us that family always comes first, Seth replied. Always, Del said. You showed us through your own actions that sometimes love means putting others' needs before your own. Sonia joined the group, wrapping them all in a family hug. My dear Seth, she said, her voice trembling with emotion, I'm so sorry you carried this burden alone. We should have made a space where you felt safe to share it. No, Mom, Seth replied firmly. It wasn't about all of you. It was about me wanting to protect the purity of Steph's journey. He looked at Steph again. I wanted to make sure that when the world saw your achievements, they understood exactly what they are, the result of an extraordinary man who made the most of every opportunity he was given. Steph wiped his eyes, a mix of gratitude and something like regret on his face. Seth, what about your own dreams? What if you had gone to that academy? What if? Seth gently interrupted him. Look at my life. I played basketball at Duke University. I had a career in the NBA. I have a family I love. Do you think I'm unhappy? Do you think I have regrets? Steph shook his head, but still looked worried. But you'll never know what might have happened if. That's okay, Seth said with a conviction that even surprised himself. Because I know exactly what my choice led to. I watched my younger brother become one of the greatest basketball players ever. I saw our family come together around realized dreams. I saw millions inspired by your story. He paused, glancing at each family member around the table. Most importantly, I saw what true love can build when there's no ego or competition in the way. Riley, who had been quiet the whole time, finally spoke with the honesty only a child can have. Uncle Seth, does that mean you're the reason Daddy is famous? The innocent question cut through the emotional tension, and everyone was silent for a moment. Then Seth laughed, a genuine and freeing laugh. No, Riley, he said, crouching down to her level. Your daddy is famous because he's incredibly talented and worked harder than anyone I know. I just made sure he had the best chance to show the world his talent. Ryan, eager to join in, added his own take. So you're like a secret superhero? Seth smiled warmly, ruffling the boy's hair. No, buddy. I'm just an older brother who loves his younger brother very much. Del cleared his throat, his voice heavy with feeling. Seth, I want you to know something. the choice you made at just 14 years old didn't only impact Steph's life, it shaped all of ours. The way you carried this burden with such grace and humility for so long fills me with a pride I find hard to put into words, Dad. Seth began. No, please let me finish, Dell interrupted. You gave up your own chance, changed the entire path of our family, and never once let it breed resentment or bitterness. That's not just maturity, that's the kind of character most people spend a lifetime trying to achieve. Sonia nodded, tears streaming freely now. And the fact that you waited until now to share this, carrying that weight to protect how we saw Steph's accomplishments, that is love in its purest form. Steph looked at Seth with a mixture of admiration, gratitude, and something close to reverence. Seth, I don't know how to thank you, not just for the decision you made as a kid, but for shielding me from any complications around it all these years. You don't have to thank me, Steph, Seth replied. You lived your life honoring that opportunity fully. You became not only a great player but a great man, a devoted father, and an inspiring example. That's the best thanks I could ever hope for. Isha, who had been quietly watching the brothers, finally spoke. Seth, may I ask why now? After all these years, why tell us this story? Seth paused thoughtfully. Because I realized our family deserves complete honesty. I don't want there to be any secrets between us anymore, not even those kept with the best intentions. He looked around the table. And because I finally understand that you're all strong enough to hear this story and see it for what it truly is, a story of love, sacrifice, and family. Steph stepped closer to Seth. Brother, the next time someone asks how our family got to where we are, I'm going to tell this story. It doesn't diminish my accomplishments. It shows the kind of family that raised me, the kind of love that made everything possible. Steph, you don't have to, Seth said. Yes, I do, Steph insisted. This story belongs to all of us. I don't want you to carry it alone any longer. Dell approached his sons again. Boys, do you realize this conversation changes everything for me? How so, Dad? Seth asked. Because now I understand that I didn't just raise two outstanding basketball players. I raised two exceptional men, one who had the courage to sacrifice out of love, and another who had the grace to honor that sacrifice completely. The room grew silent again, but this time it was not the heavy silence of revelation. It was a thoughtful silence, as the family absorbed a deep truth about themselves. Sonia broke the quiet. Seth, honey, can I make you a promise? Of course, Mom. I promise that from now on, our family will be a place where truths like this can be shared without fear, a place where love is strong enough to embrace complexity. Seth smiled, feeling for the first time in 19 years the full relief of no longer carrying this burden alone. Thank you, Mom. That means everything to me. Riley, still digesting the grown-ups' conversation with the straightforward logic of a child, offered a final observation that perfectly summed things up. At that moment, I realized our family was even more special than I had imagined. Everyone laughed, the tension finally melting away completely. Yes, Riley, Seth said as he picked up the girl. Our family is unique because we love each other enough to face difficult decisions and are strong enough to accept complicated truths. Later that night, after the children were asleep and the dishes cleaned, Steph and Seth found themselves alone on the terrace, gazing at the lights of Oakland glowing in the distance. Seth, Steph spoke softly. Thank you for what? For giving me the opportunity to pursue the career I had. For protecting how I viewed it all these years, and for finally trusting our family enough to reveal the truth. Seth smiled, feeling a burden he had carried for nearly 20 years finally lift away completely. Thank you for being the kind of man who honored that chance, Steph. For becoming everything I believed you would when you were 12. The two brothers sat in peaceful silence, reflecting not only on the city lights but also on the new chapter of honesty and understanding they had opened for their family. For Seth, this marked the end of a long time of protective silence and the start of a new era where he could fully be himself within his family. For Steph, it brought a deeper awareness of the love surrounding him and a renewed gratitude for the journey that led him here. And for the Curry family as a whole, it was proof that their love was strong enough to face complex truths and grow even closer through complete honesty. The secret kept for 19 years was finally unveiled, not as something that divided them, but as a testament to the extraordinary depth of their love and commitment to each other.